welfare and true needs of the people of Teignbridge, a commitment to social justice and righteousness, confidence in what is honourable and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, and peace in their personal lives and joy in their civic duties. And so we pray for the agenda set before us today. Grant us an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around Teignbridge. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. I do appreciate it. And I will say publicly, thank you very much for officiating at my civic service on Sunday. Thank you very much, Nick. I know you're a busy man, so we'll let you go. Thank you very much. Right, a few notes regarding the meeting. Just to let you know that no fire alarm test is planned, and should the fire alarm sound, please leave the room at your nearest exit and meet at the far end of the car park. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak, and stay seated when speaking. Please wait until a boom microphone is brought to you. You will not be heard on the live stream otherwise. Wear masks at all times unless you are seated. Keep points short, and I ask members not to repeat points that have already been raised. And voting will be by a show of hands. Thank you. Right, item 1 on the agenda, apologies of absence. Could I have apologies for absence, please?
I have Councillor Austin. Can you hear me? Councillor Austin, Councillor Bradford, Councillor Haynes, Councillor Orme, Councillor Peart, Councillor Purser and Councillor Foden.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, item 2, the minutes of the council meeting on the 20th of September 2021. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Connick propose. Seconder? Councillor Dewhurst. Okay, I see a hand at the back. That's Councillor Patch. Councillor Patch. Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've had a look through the minutes. I can't see any reference to the supplementary questions that were put by members of the public and members of this council. As I understand it, that those are actually parts of the business of the council. I would expect to see them in the minutes, so I will move to defer acceptance of the minutes until they are complete.
Can I just come in there, Councillor Patch? The minutes really are a record of decisions. That's the only thing we can discuss. They are not a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So as such, the meetings stand as they are. Councillor Eden. Councillor Eden, in the front here, please.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I've just got a correction. You were just saying, Councillor Parker, that there are a record of decisions. One of the decisions was to adjourn the meeting after Councillor Cllr Taylor rose from his seat and entered into an altercation with Councillor Malone, and there's nothing at all in the minutes about that, which I find an omission, which is not a good one.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to defer to speak to the legal person next to me, please. The answer to that is when that took place, the meeting had already been adjourned, so it wasn't part of the meeting. Okay.
I think these are ridiculous and weasel words. I think if we've got a video online which shows very definitely that the meeting was adjourned after that altercation took place and after Councillor Taylor had launched himself at Councillor Malone, I think at the very least we ought to record the fact that there was an adjournment. That's just a matter of fact and history.
Just bear with me a second. I think I've made my point. We're going to move on. I've addressed it, so please, we're not going to go any further with the minutes. So we have a proposer, Councillor Connick. We have a seconder, Councillor Dewhurst. So can we please go to the vote, please? point of order. Councillor Dawes.
I understand that Councillor...
Excuse me, Councillor Dawes. Can I ask, if you a point of order, what rule are you talking about has been broken?
The point of order is that Councillor Patch put forward a motion to defer the minutes, so he could remind me, and I'm seconding that, so I think that probably needs to go to a vote. And I think what you can't do is airbrush out of history that an assault occurred during a meeting and not record it.
I'm sorry, we're going to move on to that. We're not going to take that. We've got a proposal for the minutes to be... We're going to have the minutes voted on. It's proposed by Councillor Connett, seconded by Councillor Dewhurst. Can we go to the vote, please? All those in favour of accepting the minutes? Any against? Obviously. Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you very much. That is 2 abstentions. Right. I can see 2. That's carried. Okay, I have a few announcements to make. Item 3 on the agenda. Firstly, I'd like to bring to the Council's notice that a woodland in Teenbridge, known as the Perridge Estate, which is near Longdown in Exeter, it's won an award in the Resilience Award for the existing woodlands in the All England. It is the winner of that award jointly, and a letter has been sent by myself on behalf of the Council to congratulate the owner of that woodland, Sir Harry Studholme, on that award, in its respect of climate change and developing species that are resistant to climate change. So that is an excellent situation, and congratulations, and a letter will be going on behalf of the Council from myself. Now, at this time, we're going to receive a statement from Cllr Taylor, and this statement is purely that. It is a statement, and it is not open up for debate. So a short statement from Cllr Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the Council, I come before you today to offer my sincere apologies for my part in what occurred at the last meeting of this Council. Whilst my actions were intended to prevent an escalation of an ongoing situation, I recognise that in the field of politics there is no place for physical confrontation, however well-intentioned or otherwise. You have my word that I will not act in this manner again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Cllr Taylor. As I said, that's just a statement, so we'll move on. Another announcement regarding the agenda. I intend to change item 18 and 19 the other way around. So the notice of motions will come before Councillor questions, and that is at the end of the agenda. Notice of motions will come before Councillor questions. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Chair. This is something obviously that I raised with you last night, and not having had any guidance, I'm having to make a judgment call on putting these declarations of interest in the public domain. I am at present engaged in a legal action against Teenbridge District Council, on behalf of whom Mr. Paul Woodhead is acting. That means I believe I have a declaration of interest with relation to item number 8 on today's agenda, the appointment of the monitoring officer. Having looked at the guidance on the Members' Code of Conduct and declarations that should be made in terms of pecuniary interests, I can't see that although I have a financial interest in the outcome of that legal case, as being handled by Mr. Paul Woodhead, I don't see that listed as a pecuniary interest that would prevent me from taking part in that item. I'm happy to be advised otherwise. Secondly, with respect to the same item, I think it's something that I should declare that I have submitted a complaint for breach of the officer's code of conduct against Mr. Paul Woodhead. Again, I do not think that prevents me from taking part in the item discussion of number 8, but I shan't vote on that to be sure.
Thank you, Councillor Patch. That's something you obviously declared and we can discuss under item 8. You have declared it at this time. Thank you for that declaration. Right, moving on now to item 5, which is public questions. And we did have one public question from Mr. Andrew Malcolm from the Alexander Theatre. He's not present. You've probably seen the question and it has been answered in writing. But Mr. Malcolm is not here present to ask any supplementaries, so we will move on at this stage. Item 6 is the final accounts and governance. And the Executive Member for Corporate Services will present this item. Councillor Keeling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I would first like to thank Martin Flintcroft and his team for working with Grant Thorntons. This statement of accounts has been very taxing for the team, as the regulator has requested more information for Grant Thorntons to look into and to report. In summary, we have, as of 31st of March 2021, general reserves of 2.06 million, which is a significant improvement on the original budget of £80,000. May I point out future risks around future funding from government and the adequacy of reserves going forward, as further action may be required to address the continuing impact of COVID-19 pandemic and budget gaps. Other considerations you will hear from Julie Massey of Grant Thorntons is the issue on property, plant and equipment valuations and evidence to substantiate those valuations, which the estates team and our finance team are happy with. Further on the agenda, in item 10, the new financial system will help improve availability of information to our external auditor, Grant Thornton, which they support. I conclude that this administration took action when needed for the frontline services to continue for the well-being of Teamis residents. So I propose, Mr. Chairman, that the Council resolves to A, approve the 2020-21 Statement of Accounts, including the Annual Governance Statement and Letter of Representation as recommended by the Audit Scrutiny Committee, subject to a final adjustment agreement with the external auditors to be reported to Council, and B, note the audit finding report from Grant Thornton and approve the action arising from the action plan. C, note the mid-year review of Treasury Management for 2021-22 as recommended by the Executive on the 2nd of November. Mr. Chairman, can I now pass you over to Councillor Morgan, Chair of Audit Scrutiny.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to second this. It's been scrutinised at Audit Scrutiny, a cross-party committee. I'd just like to say thank you to the staff who've had an awful amount of extra work to do this last 18 months. So I'm very happy to second this.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Now, at this time, I'd like to pass over to Julie Massey, I hope I've pronounced that right, to give us an address, some details on the final accounts. Julie is over there.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much indeed, and good morning, councillors. So the report you have in front of you today follows on from the report we presented at the Audit Scrutiny Committee last month and gives an update to the outcomes of the financial statements audit. As you will pick up from page 23 of your papers, page 3 of my report, it has been a difficult year for the Council, recognising the continuing challenges that COVID has brought. And as a result of that, we've had to do a lot of our work remotely. Now, there has been some issues around the ability of the finance system to give us information in the format we need. We are moving forward very much in a digital way as far as our audit is concerned, and it's recognised that the Council needs to invest in its financial systems to improve the data that is presented as part of the audit. So I'd absolutely welcome Councillor Keeling's point about the item later in this agenda around the implementation of a new finance management system, and that absolutely will support improvements in the information that's prepared to support the audit process. has been highlighted. There are no significant issues arising to date from the audit, with the exception of that highlighted in relation to the valuation of property, plant and equipment. There's been a continuous level of increase in work around estimates in the accounts, and your property valuations are a significant part of that. In fact, it's the biggest item on your balance sheet, and so as your auditors, we're required to look at that in some detail, not just looking at the valuation reports provided by your experts, but also all of the detailed assumptions that underpin that. And we need to be able to evidence that to third-party source data to make sure we understand where those assumptions have come from. So whilst we are satisfied that there are clearly valuation reports that support your valuations in the accounts, where we've been having some challenges is around actually evidencing the underlying detailed assumptions that support those valuations. Based on where we are at the moment, as far as the audit is concerned, we would be proposing a qualification of the audit opinion around those valuations, because we do not, at the moment, feel that we have sufficient information to support those valuations. That process needs to go through quite a detailed moderation within Grant Thornton. It's really important to highlight that property valuations is an area of significant judgment and subjectivity, which is why we need to give it a lot of focus. But it's also important to say that a qualification is not taken lightly. It's an option of last resort, and we have to make sure that we've explored all possible avenues with officers to see whether there is any information that can be provided to us before we reach that final conclusion. But we do recognise it's been a very challenging period for officers across the authority, and indeed resources within the estates team have been reduced at this stage of the audit, and so it's obviously there's a finite amount of resource that can support this. So we will continue to work with officers over the coming days to see what we can do to resolve this matter, but it's just really to highlight to this council that if we're not in a position that we can seek that additional evidence, then that will be the proposed way forward as far as the audit is concerned. I think it's also important to highlight that this is not something that is being experienced by Teambridge Council. It's an area, as I said, that requires a lot of scrutiny, and indeed we are seeing evidence of such challenges at other authorities as well, because of the level of work we have to do around these specific assumptions. But we're very much working with the estates team to make sure that for the valuations process for next year, that improvements are already starting to be put in place so that this issue doesn't reoccur for the future. Outside of the property valuations, you'll see that we've highlighted some other recommendations in our audit report. Those have been fully accepted by management. And it's pleasing to also note that whilst there have been some adjustments to the accounts that you have in front of you at this meeting, those are mostly of a disclosure nature, and none of those affect either the reserves or the reported position of this council. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave my report at that point, but happy to take any specific questions before it goes to a vote.
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Russell. Question? Put your hand up and so.
Regarding the property valuations, particularly in the areas of Devon and Cornwall, are you valuing up or down? Thank you.
It's a bit of both, so depending on the nature of the properties, properties will go up and down. So for example, some assets are valued on an income basis, and because of the reduced levels of income that have been generated during the COVID period, some of those valuations have gone down. In some cases, some properties still manage to weather the storm of the economic conditions fairly well and are still seeing some increases. So there's no one size fits all. It's a bit of a mixture.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bullivant. Behind you. Behind you.
Thank you very much. I note on page 34 that the Council's pension deficit has grown by 21.447 million since its last revision, which is obviously a concerning increase, and I appreciate that this is down to actuarial valuations. The pension fund, I understand, is invested with the Devon pension scheme, which doesn't show such a deterioration in its funds. or shortfall in its funds. Can you tell me what the implications are for the council having this increased deficit within its pension fund portfolio?
So I think it's important to highlight there's two aspects of the pension fund valuations that councillors should be aware of. There's an accounting valuation that's done for the purposes of the year-end account. So effectively, the actuary comes in at the end of each year and does a position statement to make sure that the valuation that's in the council's accounts complies with the accounting standards. That's separate to the funding valuation that the actuary does on a 3-year basis, which informs the level of contributions that are set that this authority effectively has to pay towards pensions. So whilst on paper it looks quite a significant increase in the liability, that will not affect the levels of contributions the authority will need to effectively pay from its budget, because that is set at the start of the 3-year period from the separate funding valuation that's conducted by the actuary to inform the level of contribution rates that are set. So actuarial assumptions jump up and down all the time, and so this is just to reflect the accounting requirements of IAS 19, which shows a sort of a snapshot at a point in time in the accounts of the authority. But that will not affect your contribution levels. That will be then reassessed based on the funded position of the fund as a whole every 3 years. So that funded valuation, I think, is due in another 18 months, 2 years' time. So financially to you, there's no impact of those assumptions moving around at the moment. That will be driven by the next triennial valuation in a couple of years' time. I don't know if Martin wants to add anything more to that.
Martin Flitcroft. Can we just pause there a little bit, Martin? I think there's not quite catching all of that. So can we just restart that?
Nothing generally to add, apart from what Julie said around the 18 months. So in 18 months' time, we'll know about the next triennial evaluation, which will determine what we actually pay in terms of percentage contribution year on year. And there's a deficit contribution as well, which is adjusted to reflect what's going on generally around in economic conditions, life expectancy, and a number of other things. So that's the situation as we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Councillor Dawes at the back.
Thank you.
He's already there.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I was wondering if within the accounts, given that Teignbridge District Council has a habit of making £250,000 payoffs to ex-employees without disclosing the full details why, whether there are any payments of any scale.
Can Councillor Dawes, can I ask, when you ask a question, don't make a speech about other items, just ask the question, please.
I refer you to the Human Rights Act and my freedom of expression, and as I ask a question, I don't think I can be told how to frame that question. I'll carry on. So I would like to know if there are any items in the accounts in relation to ex gratia payments to former employees, or should we be looking out for those in the next set of accounts? Thank you.
Can you answer that, Julie? Or Martin? If not, we...
So we're just trying to find the note to the accounts. 1 second.
Just bear with us. Can I just at this time ask all councillors, when they're asking a question, please come to the point and ask the questions in a reasonable period, not to preamble. Can you go with the microphone, please?
Yes, in terms of officers' remuneration and exit packages, they appear every year in the accounts. They are public knowledge, and they're currently note 33 in the accounts on pages 86, 87, and page 80, 8 going on to 89. So all the information is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flitcroft. Thank you very much. As I can't see any other hands raised, I don't believe so. Councillor Bullivant? Can I just microphone?
Can I ask for confirmation, please, that the council has always adhered to the terms of contract for employees at their point of when they've left this council?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Is it possible to confirm that the council has always adhered to the contractual terms that employees enjoy at the point of time at which they've left this council?
Can you pick that up, Martin? Or Tim? Thank you, Tim.
Yes, I can confirm that any contractual issues are dealt with in terms of any exit of staff from the council. Yeah.
Thank you very much. As we have no other speakers, we have a proposal for the acceptance of the accounts from Councillor Keeling, and it was seconded by Councillor Morgan. Can we please now go to the vote? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you very much. That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Julie. Right, if we now be moving to item 7, and item 7, I would like to move and recommend that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the following item, on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 relates to an individual of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. I'd like to propose that we do that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Connett, thank you very much. We're moving part 2. Now, can I ask the public to remove themselves, please? Oh, can I go to the vote, please? Sorry. Those against? That's carried. Any abstentions? All right, thank you. That's carried, and we will now move into part 2. And in respect of your comments at the back...
members of the public's questions, I'd just like some clarification on the reason why those members of the public who are turned up expecting to hear their questions answered, or indeed read, have been disappointed in that. And it seems there was some issue with the date or time by which questions were submitted. I'm not sure. To my reading, the Constitution is very clear in the difference between clear working days and working days for timetables of submission of questions. And it seems to me, on the information I've seen, they submitted their questions on time. So I'd like some clarification on why they were rejected.
The decision was made, their questions were not submitted within the 2 days, and they were told of that fact, and they have still arrived expecting to ask those questions. So they were informed previously that the questions would not be allowed because they were within the 2 days, so they were not before the end of the 2 days. So that is the reason, that's the ruling, and that's my ruling, Councillor Patch. So, sorry, that is the explanation.
Okay, at least one member of the public says they were not informed. They were actually told their question was accepted.
I'm sorry, that's my ruling. We won't go any further with that one. Thank you. Right, thank you very much. I presume we're live streaming again. Yeah, thank you. Oh, I didn't see your hand. Councillor Patch. That's Councillor Patch. Oh, Councillor Dawes.
Councillor Dawes, sorry. My point of order, I noticed you invited Paul Woodhead back in, which is right and proper. Now it's part 1. Could we invite the other members of the public who are stood waiting outside back into the meeting, please?
It's not for me to invite them. If they wish to return, they may.
How are they going to know that
they may come back in as long as they act in a suitable manner. Thank you very much.
You have somebody here who's being voted onto the Standards Committee who's actually stood outside. I think you should have the politeness and manners to invite them back into the room.
They are perfectly entitled to come back in.
How are they going to know that the meeting has restarted?
They have been asked.
Thank you.
Related first, but totally unrelated. What breach are we talking about?
The actual who controls what members are speaking. I noticed that towards the end of my last item, the person administering the camera told the person with the microphone to move away, and so that I would not be on the record. I just wonder what authority he has in directing the proceedings of this meeting.
We thought it had been finished. That's it. To apologise if that was the impression. That's something not really meant to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So congratulations to Paul. Appointment to monitoring officer. Congratulations. Thank you. Now we can move on to item 10, which is the new financial management system. Could I go over to the Executive Member for Corporate Services, Councillor Keeling?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, as the report explains, the in-house system is no longer sustainable in this present climate. The new proposed financial system will create much-needed efficiencies and enhance reporting capabilities while making savings. We will be automating more processes so that the creditors and ordering is faster, so reducing printing costs. Our financial admin can carry out our tasks rather than strata, saving support costs from strata, improving faster availability of information, as you heard from our external auditor to our external auditor. So making savings. Mr. Chairman, we have previously approved this cost in February 2020's budget. This financial management system investment shows that Teambridge is forward-thinking, working with Exeter City Council, East Devon District Council, being better equipped for the challenges ahead, making savings long-term for the residents of Teambridge. I propose the Council resolves to 1. Approve the proposed capital budget of £267,000 for the replacement of the current financial management system and any associated systems linked to the financial management system. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Keeling. Can I have a seconder to that? I've got a few there. Councillor Morgan. Thank you very much. Do we have any comments? Councillor Parker-Khan. Over to the left here, please. Microphone.
Thank you. I think it's a good move to go to this new, more efficient integrated system. My question is around any additional costs that haven't been factored in here. Particularly, I'm looking at the strata, and it says here that there is the result of eliminating internal staffing support from strata. Are there going to be any redundancy implications there that would have a cost implication to the council?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parker-Khan. Councillor Keeling, or would you like me to ask Mr. Flitcroft? Microphone, if we could. Right, keeping you busy.
In terms of strata, we have one programmer that solely supports the financial management system. So in terms of keeping the existing system running, that's a clear risk. But we understand that over the next 2 or 3 years, as we get this system implemented, that person will be able to then work on other convergence projects and other schemes that Strata have got in the pipeline. So that's my understanding of that person's role going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Whitcliffe. Does that answer the question? Okay. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this. Obviously, it's long overdue and very much welcome. It will make our financial system much more flexible and more robust, particularly in the current climate we're living in at the moment, where we have to rely on a lot of remote working as well. And obviously, it's going to be something that will be subject to audit scrutiny, looking at very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Hocking at the back there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a very simple question, really. TDC obviously acts as payroll officers for several other little organisations, including Town Council. Will this impact on how they perform that task? And if it does, will there be any additional cost to the people that they're doing the task for? Thank you.
Mr. Flitcroft.
Easy answer to that is no, because the payroll system that we've got already installed is going to sort out any payroll going forward. So that's not affected at all. Yeah.
Thank you very much. There was one other questioner, Councillor Wrigley, but I think you've dissolved that. So thank you. No other questions. We have a proposal from Councillor Keeling, seconded by Councillor Morgan. Can we go to the vote, please? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. That's carried. Okay, thank you very much. If we can move on to item 11, and that's recommendation from executive regarding driver and operational staff, and the executive member for recycling, Councillor Dewhurst.
I'm sure that you, like so many residents in our district, have been incredibly grateful to our waste team, who've turned out in all weathers and throughout the pandemic to keep our district waste and litter free. Thank you. Due to national issues, there has been a huge HGV driver shortage. This has meant that the larger transport companies have offered ever-increasing incentives to tempt drivers to work for them, and this has worked its way through the chain to reach us here in Teignbridge. You will be pleased to know that we have market forces policies in place to deal with this, so that it does not impact on our ability to deliver a first-rate service for the people of Teignbridge. The budget implication of this proposal is 80,000 in this current financial year and 240,000 in a full year. The supplement is only payable whilst there is an ongoing rationale and will be regularly reviewed. As a good council, we need to pay our workforce fairly. Executive recommended this to Council on the 2nd of November, and I therefore propose to Council that you approve this driver and operational staff salary change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Connett. Thank you very much. Councillor Parker Khan, you can just put your hand up. So, thank you. They're coming.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Dewhurst. Our teams have done a fantastic job, and it's absolutely right that we pay them properly. And sorry, that's a bit of preamble, but it's necessary to say. My query is around the cost again to the council and how that's going to be managed. I know that it says it will create budget pressure, and we'll look at the proposals in December for next year. But my concern is how those costs, which are significant, £80,000, are going to be managed this year, and what the implications are as to where the money's going to come from. Is it from a cut from elsewhere? Are we going to eat into reserves, or where is that money going to come from? And also, if I'm allowed to ask as well about the market forces supplements, if we feel that we should be paying our drivers properly, surely we should be increasing their salary per se, rather than as a temporary thing, just as an uplift because of market forces. I think it's something we should pay our staff properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dewhurst, you'd like to come back on that? Just in front of you.
Thank you. In terms of the market forces, to take your second question first, in terms of the market forces, clearly they're going to be ongoing and therefore we will be continuing to pay. In terms of where the money comes from, I'm afraid I think we need to go over to Mr. Flitcroft, our finance manager, to explain where that 240 or 80,000, the figure is in fact £80,290 for this year.
Mr. Flitcroft, behind you.
Yeah, so in terms of the last budget report that we took to Executive on the 2nd of November, we indicated that there was a saving this year of just over £700,000. So effectively the £80,000 cost is going to push that back to about 620. And then the 240 ongoing year after year, I'm looking at as part of the overall budget papers for the back end of December and the initial budget proposal, so that they'll form part of the overall exercise. And we're doing savings exercises as well corporately to try and balance the budget, so it'll come out in the wash as part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flitcroft. Councillor Cox, put your hand up, Councillor Cox.
It's very nice to have compliments about our waste teams from members of the public who do constantly say that, and I hope everyone will give a Christmas box to our refuge collectors. But we're asking where the money should come from. Perhaps government might be prepared to, and perhaps those of a certain political persuasion in this council chamber could write to the government and say, give us a fair amount. We've lost 60 pence in every pound. And so we do need to pay our bin collectors a fair wage, but we need to do that without putting up the council tax for people. And perhaps the government, as they take a massive interest in refuge collections and set rules, etc., perhaps they might like to give a bit of money towards the cost.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Okay. No other questioners I can see. So we had a proposal from Councillor Dewhurst, seconded by Councillor Connaught. Can we go to the vote, please? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? No abstentions, so fine. That is carried. Most welcome decision, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Right, if we can now move on to item 12, and before we do, I'll just say we will due to have a short break in a while, so people can have a cup of coffee and just a break. Okay, I will announce that shortly. But if we can go to item 12, and that's a recommendation from the Deputy Chair of Licensing and Regulatory. That's Councillor Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. I'd like to present to this council the review of the statements of principles under the Gambling Act 2005, Section 23 policy. And this review is necessary every 3 years and was last approved in November 2018 and is a requirement if TDC is to continue to be a licensed authority. This was reviewed by the full Licensing and Regulatory Committee and was approved unanimously on the 23rd of October this year. So I'd like to propose acceptance of the standards of principles for this Gambling Act 2005 for the period 31st of January 2022 to the 30th of January 2025 to this council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Councillor Russell? Councillor Russell, second that. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much. Since that went through quite quickly, we'll do the next item, item 13, and that's a recommendation from Audit Scrutiny. Councillor Sally Morgan.
Thank you. I'll be very brief because this is a recommendation from the cross-party audit scrutiny. I'd like to recommend to full council the revision of the financial thresholds within the contract procedure rules be approved as stated in table 2 of 3.7 of the report. This basically brings us up to current reasonable levels without having to go to approval every time. Obviously, financial thresholds and contracts are audited and scrutinised anyway. I'd like to ask Councillor Rollison to comment as Deputy Chair. He actually chaired this meeting where the decision was made. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rollison.
Thank you, Chair. Sally's adequately outlined the paper. I chaired the meeting. It went through due scrutiny. I was impressed by the quality of the questions, quality of the answers, and particularly I think the research from officers was excellent, with extensive benchmarking and the rationale and the benefits are clearly set out in the paper. Therefore, I would, if it's not been seconded, I'll second it, but I certainly support the Council in accepting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rollison. Cannot see any other members wishing to speak, so if that's the case, we'll go to the vote. It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. We'll cover one more item before we have a break. And this is a recommendation from Standards Committee. Could we have the chairman to present this, please? I can't see where she is. Councillor Petherick. Do apologise, couldn't see you there.
Thank you, Chair. Following the resolution by full council on 23rd of November 2020 to appoint town or parish representative on Standards Committee, a recruitment exercise has been undertaken to fill this role. After a robust interview process, Sheila Brooke and Jane Taylor were offered the role, and therefore the Council is asked to approve these appointments. I propose as set out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please? Question? Okay. Seconded by Councillor Connett. Councillor Eden, you've got a question. Hand up, please. You have no boom. You know, two rushing towards you now.
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick question. What specific and accredited training in terms of diversity, unconscious bias and equalities has been lined up for these two new members?
Can we go back to Councillor Petherick? She has her hand up. Thank you.
Specific and accredited.
Okay.
Thank you.
Once these are approved, we will be looking at setting out a training programme, and that's what's been told to both applicants.
That doesn't answer my question about what the training is, though.
Well, we will be looking at the training once it's been approved. The appropriate training once it's been approved.
So all I'm asking for, it's a simple question, is for confirmation that there will be specific and accredited training in terms of diversity, unconscious bias and equalities.
The answer to that is yes.
Super, thank you very much.
Great, okay. We have Councillor Hook.
Thanks, Chair. Can I ask if this appointment, or these appointments rather, are for the duration of this municipal year, whether they're for the duration of this administration, whether they're for eternity, i.e. how long are they appointed for? Thank you.
I think the answer to that, if Councillor Petherick is not known, it is 2 years.
Fresh appointments or reappointments?
Reconsiderations, anyway. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. No more hands up, I don't believe. So it's been proposed and seconded that we approve these two appointments. All those in favour? Against? Could I please have a bit of silence at the back, please? I think we said all those, and abstentions, please. One abstention. Thank you very much. That is carried. I'd like to now move that we have a break for 15 minutes. I make the time, I know there's a clock around the corner there, a few minutes after 11, so if we can come back at just after 11:15, please, and you are welcome to coffees, £1 to go. Streaming, I presume? Thank you. If we could resume at item 15, which, please, we are in the meeting. If we could resume at item 15, which is recommendation from Procedures Committee, Late Information Replanning Committee, and this was the committee that I'm chair of. So, an item 15, two items. We recommend to the full council that all councillors be reminded that the deadline for submission of new information on planning applications being considered by the planning committee is 2 clear working days prior to the date of the meeting and no later. And recommendation 2 is any new information or submissions regarding planning applications should be submitted to the planning email address planning@teambridge.gov.uk by 2 clear working days prior to the meeting. Those are the 2 recommendations. I have been here before and went back to the procedures, and they've come back again, so they're here for your approval, and I so propose those. Seconded by Councillor Connett. Councillor Patch.
Thank you. This does raise a question or two, Chair. In particular, what happens if evidence or submissions should come to light within those 2 clear working days? Information that might be in the public domain, might even have been submitted to the planning portal. Then this obviously doesn't address what might happen in that situation. I think this goes back to the problem with this, that rather than coming from a full and thorough review of planning procedures, these are just items that have been tacked on to the end of a standards hearing, a case that was constructed against myself with regard to a complaint. These don't make any sense. They're not workable. I think if there is a proper review of planning procedures that is considered and looks at the whole of the procedures and issues that there might be in those procedures, particularly with regard to late submissions and putting submissions in front of the planning committee, then I think that's all well and good. Let there be a review. Let's just try and tack something on to pretend that this issue of planning procedures has been looked at. So I know full well that this is only coming forward in this format due to a wish to disregard complaints against planning procedures so as to instead put those issues into a constructed standards case against myself.
I think we're straying a bit there, Councillor, and getting a little bit personal, so I'm sorry. In respect of items that come forward within the 2 days, it would be a judgment call by officers as to whether they would be sufficient enough to restrict that being put to that agenda, or whether they were of little consequence, just a matter of changing dates, amounts, etc., that would be acceptable within that period. So if you, Councillor Patch, wish to put forward a motion, put forward an idea that a full review of the planning committee, then it's certainly something we could do, but that's something that would go to the procedures committee for that review before it comes to council. And we do hope to do a procedures committee meeting again very soon. Not arranged, but will be soon. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow the similar line about the timescales that are involved. We recently had a planning application come to committee at very short notice with a site visit the week before, and subsequent to finding out that it was being included onto the agenda for planning, there was a discovery of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of technical information that had been added prior to the arrangement of the agenda. Now, from the perspective of an opportunity to review that documentation and then come up with a submission, it's unlikely that we would be able, with very, very short notice agenda additions like that, to meet that criteria. And I think on the basis of that, I think putting a fixed timescale in and also leaving it to the judgment of officers who are, to be fair, expected and required within the NPPF to get developments through the system. So, you know, I would suggest that in a situation where it's a short notice that is suspended, and I would recommend that as an amendment to this particular set of clauses.
Yeah. I think this has come to this committee, and it has been proposed by myself and seconded. I'm quite willing to put the same point to you, sir, as Councillor Patch, that if a proposal to review the whole system comes for discussion at procedures, we are quite willing to do that for the future. But at this time, I think these proposals do stand. I'm not sure, Councillor Patch, is it a quick one, please? Because I normally do not want I've got others.
I would like to take your lead, Chair, and propose an amendment to this motion that these items are deferred until such time as a full and thorough review of planning procedures has taken place. That's my proposal,
right,
in case there's anyone who might second that.
That's seconded by Councillor McGregor. Okay. Councillor Cox.
I do take the point that Councillor Patch makes, but I think we should pass these today, and I think perhaps add that there is a full and thorough review of the planning procedures. Councillor McGregor mentioned about a planning app issue. You very kindly allowed me, as a neighbouring ward member and the county councillor, to speak. Obviously, some of that information was in the pub there before 2 days. It is very difficult because officers have to respond to quite complex issues. So I think we should pass these today, but also add a third issue of full and thorough. Ask the Procedures Committee to do a full and thorough look at the procedures that we do with planning applications. We need to be fair to the public, but we need to be fair to hard-working officers who need to respond. And that item was deferred because councillors were not satisfied that enough information had been provided for that. It gives the opportunity for the town council to look again at the legalities of the procedures, which we will be doing. So I think we should pass what is there today. I accept that it is a tack-on, but it is the right thing to do, and when we can have a full look at the whole procedure to be fair to both officers and objectors.
Understand what you're saying, Councillor Cox. Councillor Connett.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd ask Council to support the two recommendations. And in terms of deferral, what I'm hearing is that the system is working. That if members of the Planning Committee feel that there was too much new information that they didn't have time to consider and officers had not had time to go through and make a recommendation to Council, clearly the Planning Committee had the power to defer anyway. So the system is working, and what this does is set out for members the ideal of the submission of any new information on planning applications 2 days in advance. In my view, Chairman, the recommendations from the Procedures Committee are fine as they are, and if there is a view that the Council needs to consider again its whole procedures for planning, that should come through perhaps through a motion to the next Council and let Council then consider that in the proper way. So I would resist any amendment and support 1 and 2. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Patch.
Thank you. I'd just like to reply to Councillor Connett's assertion that the system is working. Quite clearly, in the planning meeting of July 2020, planning committee meeting, the system did not work because the officer did not bring to the attention of the committee information that perhaps might have been brought to their attention.
Councillor Patch,
because it wasn't,
I think we're straying into another issue, please.
Against me.
I think we'll draw a halt to that. Now, there has been a proposal to an amendment by yourself and seconded by Councillor McGregor. We'll go to that vote first. That was to defer this for future discussion. Now, all those in favour to defer? Please, can you have silence at the back, please? Please. I'm asking you to be quiet. I'm not going to ask you again. I'm asking you very, very... Thank you. Right. I had a proposal to defer from Councillor Patch, seconded by Councillor McGregor. Those in favour of deferral, please. Those against deferral? Any abstentions? Right. We now go... That's lost, so we go back to the main item, which was a proposal on these two items. I propose this, seconded by Councillor Connett. All those in favour? No. No, he did not. No. Please. No, there was no further proposal, I don't believe. this is something that will be dealt with through procedures, and it will come back through procedures.
For your good offices, Chair, if we can have this up procedures, then we can look at whether we need to do a review.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Parker, Calm? No, not at this time. Okay. It will be dealt with under procedures, in procedures. So, I want to move on, please. We've had a proposal, we've had a seconder. All those in favour that we accept these two as they stand? Against? Please. Against? Abstentions? Please, I've been very lenient, allowing you to come back in, and interruptions. I'm not going to allow any more interruptions, otherwise I shall adjourn the meeting again. Thank you. No, you cannot, please. You cannot. Right, that is carried. Thank you. What rule are you? Point of order, please.
It's a request for clarification. You just said that it will be handled by the procedures. What will be handled by the procedures committee?
There is nothing to be debated, Councillor Patch.
In that case, to what were you referring when, and this will be on the record, you asserted that something will be handled by the procedures
The discussion
committee?
will be handed to Procedures Committee.
Which discussion?
Just bear with us a second. We're just moving on because the vote has been passed, so that's we're going no further with that. I'm going to move on now to item 16, and that's another recommendation from the Procedures Committee. And it is that there's two items, two parts to this. Members and parish councils can request that applications to vary conditions, including legal aspects, to be called in to Planning Committee in line with Council's usual process. And a report on variations to conditions for major applications that have been approved be placed on the Planning Committee for information. I move those proposals. Seconded by Councillor Connaught. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. That is passed. We now move on to item 17, which is the committee seats allocation. I'd like to pass over to the leader, Councillor Connaught.
Chairman, following formation of a new group on the Council and adjustments in proportional entitlements, the report is before Council for its approval, and also separately on a separate piece of paper, various committee membership changes have been advised to the Council for its noting. Thank you, Chairman. I move.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McGregor. Thank you. All those in favour? Oh, Councillor Patch, you have your hand up.
Thank you, and I must thank the microphone operator to be on hand. He's obviously got an idea where the scrutiny is coming from in this council. I'd like to make the point that I do realise that calculations have been provided that might be used in making these allocations on committee seats. I'll also point to precedent where an individual member not within a group has been provided with committee seats within this last 3 years. I'm just like to register my disappointment that I'm not on the planning committee anymore, according to this, or indeed any other committees, although I'm sure there will be sighs of relief amongst certain perhaps officers and members at that decision.
Councillor Connaught.
Chairman, I note Councillor Patch's disappointment and request the Council to support the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Dawes.
Hi, I'd like to put forward an amendment that Councillor Patch is allocated a seat, as indeed Councillor Eden was when she stepped out of the Lib Dem group. So if anyone would care to second that amendment.
Seconded by Councillor Malone. I don't know what you're putting your hand up for. And no comment, please. No, sorry, you're not. No. Whoever proposal of amendment that Councillor Patch be allocated a place on the Planning Committee, seconded by Councillor Malone. That is an amendment. We'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Hold on. Councillor Connett?
It's a proportional allocation. So if Councillor Dawes is proposing that Councillor Patch is on the Planning Committee, is he offering that Councillor Patch takes one of the Newton Says No seats on planning, because it's a proportional allocation? So if the proposal is for Councillor Patch to be placed onto planning, I think we need to hear from officers on what the proportional impact of that is, what the entitlement to a place is. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. The Managing Director.
Thank you, Chairman. In accordance with local government rules and regulations, we appoint based on the proportionality of each party within it. So consequently, as an independent, Councillor Patch would be entitled to 1/47th of a seat on a committee. So if it's a planning committee with 17 members, or if it's an ONS with 11 members, or whatever the group, whatever the committee is, it's 1/47th of that proportionality. The situation is therefore correct, as the leader says, which is consequently, if you're proposing that Councillor Patch has a seat on there, somebody else won't get a seat on there, one of the other groups, because the size of the committee is finite. So it would have to be recalculated. Each time that the groups move around, there is another calculation. So consequently, with Councillor Eden becoming independent, that was slightly different in terms of proportionality of the rest of the council. So each time we will reassess it in line with what the local government regs are.
Councillor Eden.
Just to say, I'm happy to step off planning to allow Councillor Patch to be on it. It's fine by me.
Is that something that we can allow? We just bear with us a second.
Sorry, Chairman. Can we just check? Can I just check
No,
in terms of the new, in terms of
not the new allocation.
No. Yeah.
So that's not applicable. Councillor Dawes.
Yes, I take the note on proportionality and the point 047 being close to over 50. I think it'd probably be very reasonable then to look at what proportionality carries across all of the groups on the representation on planning, and see which groups carry a greater representation in a mathematical sense, and then that party should step aside one member and allow the independent to have a voice and represent his electorate and the residents of his ward.
Councillor Connett, you wanted to come back.
Chairman, as I understand it, the calculations work out as they do. I understand entirely what Councillor Dawes has suggested, but there's no entitlement to Councillor Patch. I move that the question is now put and invite Councillor to support the committee seat allocation as set out in the report.
Okay, that has been moved by Councillor Connett. I believe it was seconded. I can't. Oh, Councillor Malone, I didn't. Right beside you.
However the equations work on this, and I appreciate this is what the maths say, but if it's calculated in such a way that a true independent, as in somebody who is a party unto themselves, as people occasionally are and were voted in as this, then it's completely wrong that they should be in this council with absolutely no voice on any committee. And if that is the case, then the maths are wrong and they should be redone.
Thank you. Councillor Connett.
Chairman, everyone is elected individually onto the council, and members opt to form groups which assist in their representation. Every member has a right to attend any council meeting, any meeting of any committee, and to speak. So Councillor Patch will have a voice on planning. What he won't have is a vote, because he's not a member. and the calculations follow the local government regulations, and this is what they work out as. So, Chairman, I again ask that the question is put, and we support the committee allocations as set out. Thank you.
Right. Now, Councillor Patch, this is going to be the last, and you've said several pieces on this, so please, the last time.
Thank you for your patience, Chair. I just wanted to say that I'm not particularly keen on this matter being pressed of me going on the planning committee any further in this discussion. I just would, however, like some clarification with regard to the point made about 1/47th of a councillor position, and then how that translated into Councillor Eden having a place on the planning committee in that regard, when she was a lone independent.
Thank you, Councillor Patch. Could I ask the Managing Director perhaps to...
To be fair, Chair, I haven't got the spreadsheets with me in front of me now, but I will quite happily provide Councillor Patch with the evidence and the reasons why after this meeting.
Okay, but we're not going to go any further with this debate. I think we've had the motion requested to be put several times. So Councillor Connaught has proposed this. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dewhurst? Councillor McGregor already seconded. That's fine. So all those in favour? The amendment was?
Patch be allocated a spot on the planning committee. It was seconded by Councillor Malone.
Right. Okay, we'll go to the vote. I thought we had, but we'll go to the vote, the amendment that Councillor Patch is put on the committee. All those in favour that Councillor Patch is put on the committee? Against? Abstentions? That's not carried. So we move to the main motive, which is that the seat allocation as proposed by Councillor Connaught and seconded by Councillor McGregor. Can we go to the vote, please? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to the final two items, and as I notified at almost the beginning, we are swapping around item 18 and 19, so we'll take item 19 first, which is notices of motion, and they are presented in the order that they came to the council. So can I ask Councillor Swain to present his notice of motion?
Thank you, Chair. As we all know, the Constitution was tidied up last year. I'm very grateful to Councillor Patch for spending the time to compare the versions and flag up the changes. At the last meeting, we were urged not to nod through these changes, and I agree that these changes are important and the allegations are very important. Because of the uncertainty surrounding the old version, many of my colleagues, along with myself, voted to accept the new version, but ensure that any material changes would be reversed. I've now had time to look carefully at both versions and the changes that have been made, and I find that in two cases there have been material changes which could affect the rights of the public and councillors. Previously, the public could ask questions relevant to the business of the council. This was changed to the business of the meeting. And a power has been removed for a group leader to insist that a change to the Constitution is major if others claim it's minor. I also find that valuable opportunity to update the language was missed. So I bring this motion proposing that the monitoring officer be asked to produce a form of words that restores these two powers and substitutes non-sexist language throughout the Constitution. The revisions should come back to full council for approval. I'm happy for this to be referred immediately to the Constitution Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. So I propose that we move this straight to the Procedures Committee for further debate and then to come back to this full council at a later date. Councillor Patch.
I'll be brief, Chair. I'd just like to request, through an amendment if that's necessary, that when the Procedures Committee look at this, they look at the full list of 6 points. And
Can I just interrupt there, Councillor Patch? I understand where you're coming with this, and as we're going to have a procedures committee. Any recommendations or considerations that you want to put that procedures committee for discussion, we're quite happy for you to do that for discussion on your full list. So that is fine. Okay. Councillor Parker-Cohn.
Two-thirds majority before debating this.
Yeah. So, apologise. So do we have a two-thirds majority? All those in favour that we do debate this? Okay, just finish that off. Those against debating? So we will not have a debate on it. Right, so it's going to procedures. That is it. Point of order. Right.
Just a clarification. I believe Councillor Swain asked for it to go to the Constitutional Committee, but you've said procedure, so I wanted to know which one it's going to.
It is the Procedures Committee.
It will be, okay.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Patch, please, this is not about the same item because this...
It's a point of clarification. I am sorry, Chair. Just to follow up Councillor Parker-Khan's point, has the Constitution Working Group been disbanded now that the Procedures Committee has been set up? That was the group that was looking at constitutional issues before.
Short answer is yes.
And
it has been disbanded because it is now the Procedures Committee.
Was a decision to that effect taken and noted in any minutes of the meetings of this council?
It was. It actually wasn't a formulated committee. It was just a working party. Okay? So it wasn't a proper committee. Please, if you keep interrupting, I am going to, because I've said so many times to you, and you still keep coming back, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Please. Yeah, please. If you do not be silent, I shall suspend the meeting, adjourn the meeting again. Last opportunity for you to be silent, please. You've been pre-warned of what might happen, so please. Thank you. Forgot where we got to now. That has been passed, so that is going to Procedures Committee. Right, next second notice of motion. Can I pass to the leader for his notice of motion, please?
Chairman, I'm quite happy for this to be referred to the appropriate committee, but clearly with the current concerns around COVID and the new variant, the request to government in particular about reintroducing virtual meetings is really important for all members and members of the public. It's shown it can work well in the past, but I encourage the Council's support and very happy for this to go to committee for further consideration and then come back, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. So I would defer this straight on to the Executive Committee. So that will happen as from now. Thank you. If we move on now to the third notice of motion, that is from Councillor McGregor. Put your hand up, Councillor. There. No one knows where you are. Should do.
Thank you, Chair. This matter, I believe, is a matter for full council and is not for any other committee. So my view would be that it would be automatic for debate here, and we wouldn't need a two-thirds threshold for that. In terms of the motion, it is as disclosed in the agenda, but I would like to provide a bit of reasoning behind my decision to raise it and put it before my fellow councillors. This motion is not about personalities or a vendetta, but it will be portrayed as such, no doubt, by those uncritically backing Councillor Connett's position. I'm not here because I want to replace him as leader or shoehorn myself back into the Lib Dem group. I present this motion to you all because of a fundamental principle that we must reject physical violence in the political forum and in fact any forum. On the 20th of September this year, we saw Cllr Taylor enter into a physical altercation with another councillor. That physical altercation is a matter of record. Cllr Taylor did grab the other councillor, did try to drag him from where he was standing, and from the recording still seen afterwards, he had at one point a clenched fist and set jaw whilst holding on to the other councillor. He also offered Councillor Malone out, a euphemism for going outside for a fight, as heard by other councillors. Whatever you think of Councillor Malone or his colleagues in the manner in which they conduct themselves, it is not ever the place of another councillor, in this case Cllr Taylor, to turn vigilante and bouncer and to grapple with Councillor Malone. As a reminded Councillor Connaught, the monitoring officer, and others at the time, Cllr Taylor is not employed to or expected to intervene. He is not a security guard, has no training and no qualification, such as an SIA card. Why then did Councillor Connaught rush not only to praise the protagonist, but to attack and insult the victim? Councillor Connaught's rush to the papers to rescue his political friend demonstrates not merely poor leadership, but poor conflict management, dreadful bias, and very poor judgment. What a shame Councillor Connaught did not exercise leadership skills and swiftly organise an unreserved apology, notwithstanding the apology that we received today, and condemnation of acts of physical violence in the chamber at the first opportunity. That would have closed this down at the time. However, by leaving Cllr Taylor's actions uncriticised, by in fact praising Cllr Taylor's vigilantism, Councillor Connaught is not just condoning violence, he is promoting it. In a world that has increased levels of vitriol and abuse levelled at politicians, and following the brutal murder of David Amos MP, it seems a strange thing to have to point out to Councillor Connaught, a seasoned councillor, that physical violence is simply not acceptable. What message are we sending out to the community? What impression are we giving to teenagers and children at school? The 19th century sociologist Cllr wrote, "Everything that I say or think is influenced by what others have said or thought, and in one way or another sends out an influence of its own in turn." We do not operate in a silo. What happens in here transfers outside. My message is that people are influenced by the observable and experienced world. So condoning violence in here, Councillor Connaught risks a dangerous consequence. That the community in which we serve decide that physical violence is condoned and therefore acceptable, which it is clearly not. More than 3 women a week are murdered by men in this country. A week. Thousands more are victims of violence, some of which leads to permanent life-changing injuries and extreme trauma for their children. Trauma which leads often to lifelong mental health crises. Within the last few months, we have seen a gunman go on a shooting spree in Devon, a young woman abducted and murdered in Devon, a 12-year-old murdered in Liverpool. That's just a tiny tip of the iceberg of violence that we see on a day-to-day basis. We must demonstrate a zero tolerance to physical acts of aggression. We must certainly not normalise, or worse, as Councillor Connaught has done, praise an instigator of what, in my literal view, was an assault. I was elected to serve my community and that of the wider Teignbridge district, not merely helping people with their issues, but setting a positive example. Condoning Cllr Taylor's act of physical violence, as Councillor Connaught has done, achieves none of these things. Violence tears communities apart, causes untold suffering, and often leaves victims behind. It is essential we are clear that there is a line that should not be crossed in terms of physical violence. The idea that you can condone violence and vigilantism against an elected politician in one statement, then, as Councillor Connaught has done, a few weeks later publish a call to action that we reduce violence and abuse towards politicians, seems a further example of Councillor Connaught's poor judgment, if not a hypocritical position to take. It had been claimed by Councillor Connaught, John Nutley and Councillor Wrigley, who is setting up a workforce to prevent violence, that Cllr Taylor's attack was both a good thing and preemptive. Well, unless these 3 male councillors are mind readers, their view has no validity. You might as well say, I punched her before she could hit me. We're all used to Newton says no, ranting, pacing about and ignoring the chair. But the only person ever to introduce physical aggression in this chamber is actually Gary Taylor, Cllr Taylor. I therefore ask my colleagues to consider this, not from party lines, not personal likes or dislikes, but to look at the violence actually committed, the poor judgment that followed and continues throughout the subsequent weeks and months. Vote not along party lines, but in recognition that a vote in support of Alan Connaught as leader would quite simply be a vote for spontaneous violence, for vigilantism, and for physical abuse of elected politicians. The council must be clear to its communities that having zero tolerance of acts of violence means having zero tolerance to acts of physical violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Now, before we go any further, he's quite right in saying there is no real committee for this to be referred to. But it's the realisation that we need 2/3 of this council to vote for debate on this item. So I'm going to go to that and ask if there is a willingness within the council to debate that. And we need 2/3 of the council to debate this. You need 5. There is 5. Right, okay, fine. So we'll have a recorded vote as to whether this goes to debate. Can I ask you to call it the names, please, Sarah? Oh, Beth will do that.
Councillor Bullivant. Councillor Clarence. Councillor Cllr. Councillor Connett. Councillor Cook. Councillor Cook.
She's having difficulty hearing. We know. I'm sorry, we don't want comments like that, please.
Councillor David Cox. Councillor Hugh Cox. Councillor Dawes. Councillor Dewhurst. Councillor Eden. Councillor Goodman Bradbury. Councillor Gribble. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hayes. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Gordon Hook. Councillor Jackie Hook. Councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Jenks. Councillor Keeling. Councillor Kurzweil. Councillor McGregor. Councillor Morgan. Councillor Malone. Councillor Nutley. Councillor Nuttall. Councillor Parker Khan. Councillor Patch. Councillor John Petherick. Councillor Linda Petherick. Councillor Phipps. Councillor Rollison. Councillor Russell. Councillor Swain. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Toome. Councillor Wrigley. Councillor Evans. Councillor Parker.
Against. Can we have the numbers, please, when you can? We did not get the 2/3, so that will not be going to debate. Can I have silence, please? Silence, please. I have a raised hand. Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you. A question of clarification, if I may. This council operates under its constitution. The constitution has been in force for 43 years. Never in 43 years has a notice of motion come forward like this.
Excuse me.
We have in front of us to make a decision, an accusation against the leader about a vote of no confidence. There is no procedure defined within our constitution that actually tells us what or how it should be handled. The vote of requiring 3/4 to vote in favour or against predetermines a decision against a vote of no confidence. And for that reason, I would ask, through the chair, if this isn't something that should be referred back to the Procedures Committee to define a process and procedure that is appropriate in these circumstances. Secondly, we've had a notice through the procedures which allows the person making the notice of motion to make a case. What we haven't, and our procedures currently do not allow it, is for the respondent, in this case, as I said, the first time in 43 years, an individual has been pointed out and accused of things. Can I ask the indulgence of the chair and ask that we allow the leader to make a statement in response to the allegations made against him?
Right. Thank you, Councillor Bullivant. I understand what he says regarding this being perhaps looked at procedures, and that's something that we can consider. So if you're making that suggestion, we will certainly look at it. Right, Councillor.
During the vote, Councillor Connick clearly voted against debating it, so I suggest that he surrendered his opportunity to make a comment. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm going to disallow that because I've been asked by another member whether he would like the opportunity to come back, and I'm going to allow him to make a comment. I feel it's justified for him to make a comment. Councillor Connick.
As a point of order, Chairman, I'll wait until you've dealt with that one.
Right, so what's the point of order then, basically?
The point of order is that you're acting unconstitutionally. What Councillor McGregor said is correct. This is not to be debated, and favours cannot be given to councillors in the way that you're showing as chair. This is totally and utterly unconstitutional.
Chairman, I would seek to exercise my right to make a personal statement in view of what's been said.
There is no debate, but an allegation has been made by one individual against another, and I think there's nothing in the Constitution about this, so there's, in a sense of natural justice, it is only correct that the leader be allowed to make a reply.
Chairman, point of order. In the Constitution, if a councillor is accused personally, he has a right to have, and he shall be heard, against all others, he shall be heard to give a personal statement. That is in the Constitution. People are going on about the Constitution being changed. That is in the Constitution. Live by the Constitution.
I think we have answered that. Can we please... I'm going to adjourn the meeting. If you have one more outsmirch at the back, it's going to be adjourned. This is the last warning. Councillor Connett, would you like to make a personal comment?
I would. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to respond. The key tasks of this council are headlined in the three overarching priorities: homes to those who need them, creating and protecting jobs, tackling climate change. I want to thank all of our staff for the excellent work they are doing and to help us achieve those goals and maintaining our day-to-day services. As councillors, we draw our authority from the people who elect us. We all have one thing in common. We have polled at least one vote more than the person who wasn't elected. The council leader draws their authority from the council, you. In turn, the executive members under the council's constitution draw their authority from the leader. As individual councillors, we are each responsible for our own actions and behaviour. I welcome Cllr Taylor's apology to the council earlier in this meeting. I too have apologised to council after a councillor felt a comment I had made was not appropriate. Some councillors, though, choose not to apologise. Some arm themselves with their own sword of truth and seek to protect themselves with a shield of openness, honesty and transparency. Let's take a closer look, Chairman. One councillor declares they own 2 properties, and yet I am told the land registry shows them to be in someone else's name. One councillor, Chairman, I'm entitled to speak and to be heard.
Please, can you... This, Councillor Connett is allowed to speak.
Chairman, I'm entitled to speak.
Yes, sir. Please, can we refrain?
One councillor declares they own 2 properties, and yet I am told the land registry shows them to be in someone else's name. One councillor appears not to declare the property in the district that they actually live in. One councillor...
Councillor Malone, can you be quiet, please?
One councillor had made 2 applications to the Teambridge Planning Service this year, and on each has declared they are not a councillor. One councillor declares themselves to be a company director, but a simple check at Companies House appears to show the company was dissolved earlier this year. Are these Are these significant matters? You decide. However, these same councillors hold others to a standard they themselves appear not to want to observe. Each councillor is responsible for declaring their register of interests. It is there for a reason, and if a councillor chooses not to disclose their property interest, then does it not lead to the questions: what other land or interests are they not declared? What other associations are kept secret from the public gaze? Chairman, we have all been elected equally. We do and will all disagree on matters. We can conduct the life of the council with civility and focus on the things that matter most, the services we provide for our customers, which help and support them in their daily lives. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Is that it, Councillor Connett? Thank you. That is it. There's no further debate on this. This is actually... Councillor Malone, would you please sit down? Please. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is adjourned.